Hi, I'm Jennifer McKinnon, and I'm a maritime archaeologist, and I'm a professor at East Carolina University in the U.S. in North Carolina. And I'm here to talk about underwater cultural heritage and shipwrecks and why they're important. So I think that there's many reasons why they're important, but if I was to narrow it down, I would say that the ocean is largely truly unexplored, and there's so much for us to learn about underwater cultural heritage and shipwrecks and other sites that are underwater. And so it's a horizon that we still need to continue to understand and explore. Secondly, the sites are significant from a historical and archaeological perspective. They can tell us about humanity and our use of the water as a place that not only divides us, but also connects us in our past. I think three, for underwater archaeology and preservation of shipwrecks and sites, it's important for us to make sure that those sites are going to be there for generations to come. What we have underwater today is all we have. And so for four, I say those sites are not renewable. And we have to make sure that we spend the time and effort and work with communities to support that heritage and preservation. And finally, five, those sites are located in local waters. And I think it's really important for communities to understand that it is their shared heritage with whomever it belongs to, including themselves. And there's reasons why communities need to engage on those sites that range from tourism to fishing to diving and education. And that's why I think underwater cultural heritage is important in 5 steps. So underwater archaeology is archaeology underwater. It literally is just that, and it can include sites that range from our first habitation sites of prehistoric peoples moving around the world to shipwrecks of the colonial period and beyond. Okay, so my personal opinion, the best shipwreck in the U.S. is actually a series of shipwrecks. They are 13 Spanish shipwrecks that are wrecked off the Florida coast in the Florida Keys. And they were headed from Havana, Cuba, back to Spain, carrying the treasures and goods of the New World to the Old World. And they wrecked on Friday the 13th, 1733. And they're still there, and you can visit them today, and they're part of a heritage trail, which focuses on the true treasure of the sites being the historical documentation of those and what is still left today. So I'm currently working on a project that explores maritime heritage of the Mariana Islands and American Samoa to create a database of maritime heritage underwater, but also to incorporate traditional cultural properties and traditional cultural use areas that often are intangible and can't be seen, like sailing and navigation practices, and a variety of different types of indigenous Pacific Island sites that aren't necessarily on the record. Okay, so I'm gonna go with the most embarrassing thing I found on a dive. So the most embarrassing is I was excavating an 18th century Spanish shipwreck in the Florida Keys, and at the last day we came upon an area that had all kinds of ceramics and glass and metals, and it had been burned and it was fused together. And so I picked up a piece of metal that I thought was actually silver, because this was one of the treasure ships that were heading back to Spain, and I recovered it and took it back to the lab, And whenever we tested it with PXRF, which is a technique for defining what kind of material it is, it turned out to be melted aluminum. So it was an aluminum can piece that had melted that actually looked like silver. And I still keep that piece on my desk today to remind me that as researchers, we all make mistakes, but we can learn from them and continue to refine our expertise. So I think there's two major misconceptions about underwater archaeology. One, that it's all just shipwrecks, and it isn't shipwrecks. There are aircraft that crashed into the sea. There are trains that are at the bottom of the ocean that were traversing areas across water. There are also submerged habitation sites from prehistoric peoples who lived. So it's very wide-ranging. And I think the second misconception is that shipwrecks look like they did when they sunk. And that is not the truth. They're often very degraded, although often preserved well, but we don't see them with billowing sails hanging out in the water column. They do look very different from the day they went down.